Hey, Daniel. Good morning. Rob Cesternino. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very good. Very nice to get the chance to finally get to talk about everything that's going on. How has this roller coaster ride been for you, Daniel?
Well, I mean, I can answer that question, but the first thing I want to do is let you know that I'm so sorry to Dominic and what's your other kid's name?
Anthony.
And
Yes,
Anthony,
yes,
Dominic and
yes.
Anthony. I said to myself before I left, if I win, I am going to like pay my respects to all the people who helped me win. And one of the things I'll do is I remember there was a podcast where you said that Dominic and Anthony wanted a Lego Death Star, but you didn't want to buy it for them because it was so expensive. And
Yes, yes.
it broke my heart because I know the pain of not getting the Lego that you really want. And I said to myself, if I win Survivor,
Wow.
I'm 1,000,000% buying Dominic and Anthony that Lego Death Star. So
Daniel,
I want to offer my apology to them that they will not get it from me one of
okay.
these days, maybe.
Well, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Although the thought of stepping on a 9,000 piece Lego set in the middle of the night is truly terrifying. Congratulations also to you on your engagement this past week. But Dan, we have so much Survivor to talk about. So let's get into from last night's episode. Did you know going into Tribal Council that you were going to be the target?
I was totally and utterly snookered. I 1,000% thought that Chanel was going home. The reason I thought that was because of one conversation that I had with Hai on the beach, where it was about a day or two after the cluster of a tribal.
Yes.
And I basically had a convo with him where it was very emotional. And I was expressing how grateful I was to be on the show and like it's a lifelong dream. And I talked about how I wanted to represent sick children, basically, on the show. And he was, we had like a great combo, and he had an emotional response, and we hugged. And I thought after that combo, I was like, I've really bonded with Hai here. I'm like very safe. Like Hai and I are tight now. And I was wrong. I was like totally, utterly wrong. And Hai's a great Survivor player. Like I would say he had a bad social game the first 7 days because he and Lydia were on the outs. But in terms of deception, guy's really good. Look out for Hai. He's really, really good at this stuff.
Did you signal in any way that you were going to play the shot in the dark?
No. Mm-hmm. I didn't. I had no intention of playing it. I gave no signals that I was going to play it.
Yeah. Did you and Chanel at all talk about potentially reuniting prior to Mike getting his vote back?
No, because there was no point. It's like, what was the point? There were 4 votes. And if Mike doesn't have a vote, like Hai and Lydia are a unit, what's the point in the Chanel and I forming a unit and having what? We're going to have another rock draw? Like that makes no sense. The lose your vote era of Survivor limits strategy to a certain extent, because for the vast bulk of the game after the cluster of a tribal in episode 3, there were only 4 votes. Chanel and I knew it. And so it was all a game of who can, convince Hai to keep him around. That was it. Because Lydia was going to do whatever Hai wanted. So with only 4 votes, it was all about Hai. Now, maybe after Mike got his vote back, in like the very brief period of time, like an hour, maybe Chanel, Mike, and I could have teamed up. But the reality is that was never going to happen, because at that point, Chanel and I feel like there was too much. I mean, we'd spent like 2 days trying to get the other one out. It would have been a difficult reconciliation to have.
Daniel, let's go back to the cluster of a tribal council from a couple of weeks ago, because we had so many questions about all of that. So going into that tribal council, did you have a full accounting of the fact that there would be only the 4 votes?
Yes, I knew. Yes, I did. Just blunt. Yes.
Okay. So did you consider, when it went to the revote, knowing that only you and Hai would have a vote, did you consider switching your vote to Jenny at that point?
No, I did not, for 2 reasons. One, because I wanted to maintain loyalty to my alliance, and which at the time was Mike and Chanel and me and Jenny. I wanted to maintain loyalty to that. And then 2, I knew about the Will Wall situation from season 33, where like he flipped or he switched and someone else, and basically it resulted in a rock draw. So
I think he was afraid that if he switched,
So I didn't I had no intention of flipping. I wanted to remain true to the alliance.
Okay. So many people, including myself, tried to get inside your head after it came down to that stalemate of, okay, potentially heading into the rock draw. Can you talk us through what was your intention from the moment that you started talking at that stalemate of trying to decide whether or not to go to rocks?
Okay, so it's the evolution of strategy, volume 4 or 5. We're on volume 5 now in the future, and you're analyzing this.
Yes.
Your analysis has to begin, Rob, when I shared with Chanel that Mike lost his vote, right? Because at that moment, I was giving Chanel the power to get rid of me. Because up until that moment, it was, 6 people had votes, and Chanel and I were in the middle. The moment I shared with Chanel that Mike had lost his vote, I was giving Chanel the power to go to Hai and Lydia, who she had bonded with better, because she's a great social player, and people should stop hating on her because she's really good at Survivor. She made one bad mistake. Okay, but putting that aside, I gave her the power to get rid of me, and then she would have been in the middle of 2 pairs of. So I was totally and utterly honest and loyal. I followed the Rob Cesternino playbook of finding a number 1 and going all in on the number 1, and I was all in on Chanel. I told her everything, absolutely everything, including what could get rid of me. Okay. Now, fast forward to right before we go to the immunity challenge that we ended up losing. Chanel and I had a combo before that challenge, and we both looked at each other and we agreed that under no circumstances will either of us risk our vote if we go on the summit, under no circumstances, right? So when she comes back from the summit and she says, I lost my vote, at that moment, I thought I'd been betrayed by Chanel. Like, that is a betrayal of trust. What do I do in that moment? And that's the key question that in Evolution of Strategy, Volume 5, that's the moment you have to make the decision. You're 7 days, 600 total calories. You have an hour at most, probably more like a half an hour, 45 minutes before you go to tribal. And what do you do in that moment? And I decided in that moment, I'm going to remain loyal to Chanel. I'm going to go to tribal. I'm going to vote Lydia. Like, that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to remain loyal to Chanel. She's my number 1. I'm going all the way to the end with Chanel. Stand the course. All right. So then we go to tribal. And at tribal, we've gone over the voting and why I didn't back down the vote. Again, I could have backed down. I wanted to remain loyal to my alliance of Mike and Chanel. Then you have the cluster of the situation. And do you remember, Rob Cesternino, did you pay close enough attention, Mr. Know-It-All, to what I asked Jeff Probst right before the rock draw discussion commenced? Do you remember what I asked?
I think you wanted to know, do the people that don't have votes, do they have to draw rocks also?
Yes, I clarified that because to me, a game of chicken, which is what it was. I don't want to like fight the narrative. It was a game of chicken. I just didn't know it was a game of chicken because I thought it was a 3 versus 1 situation. And I wanted to clarify with Jeff whose vote, who would be at risk of going home. Because when I found out all 4 of us would have to draw rocks, that signals to me my allies, Mike and Chanel, might go home if we draw rocks. Right? Their lives in this game are in my hands right now because it's a 3 versus 1 and I'm the only one that can subject them to the risk of going home. So when I stupidly, I'm not going to defend it, but when I stupidly opened what I thought was a discussion, not negotiation, when I stupidly opened with I'm not going to rocks, that is me communicating to my allies, Chanel and Mike, you can trust me. I am not going to force you to risk your life in this game. Because you can trust me and you're not at risk, join me in trying to convince Hai to flip and send Lydia home. And best case scenario, Rob, best case scenario is Mike and Chanel say, Hai, we would have voted Lydia if we had votes. Let's just get rid of Lydia. If we don't get rid of Lydia, you're going to be on the outs. Like, I don't know what would have happened. It was a losing scenario. It was a really bad, but like that's best case scenario of what could have happened. Middle case scenario is Chanel and Mike say like, we're neutral, but let's have a discussion. Let's like figure it out. And then they play aside subtly without making it clear where they actually stand. All right. I got worst case scenario, which was Chanel and Mike both said, I don't want anything to do with you. Go away. This is not my problem. I don't have a vote. You figure it out. Like, it's all on you, bro. And frankly, at that moment, I felt totally and utterly betrayed after having gone all in on these people who I really loved. And I really, up until that moment, had shown total loyalty to, with the exception of Mike, who I shared with Chanel about his idol, right? In the rank order of like Chanel's number 1, Jenny and Mike are number 2. I demonstrated total and utter loyalty to that hierarchy up until that moment. So I had an emotional human response in that moment to what transpired.
Daniel, we saw in the secret scene last week that you went to Chanel. She admitted to you, okay, fine. Yeah, I wanted to get Lydia voted out. Were you ever able to make the case to the rest of the group that, Chanel was, just as willing and able, or I guess unable in her case, to make the move against Lydia at that tribal council?
So one of the mistakes I made is there's an inflection point in the tribal. So like pay attention in the tribal, and at every point I'm demonstrating
I always
loyalty.
do.
Yeah, at every point I'm demonstrating loyalty until the inflection point where I realize Mike and Chanel are running for the hills, which by the way, internet, stop hating on me for Jenny. I'm the only one that did anything to try to save Jenny. Get mad at Mike and Chanel for literally running for the hills.
Or don't get mad at anybody. It's just Survivor.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. You're very right about that. But like I'm the only one that made any effort to try to save Jenny whatsoever. I'm the only one. So at that inflection point, what do I do? At that inflection point, I screw my whole game. All right, great. But I had a human emotional response. And the mistake I made is everyone thinks there was strategy. Maybe he realizes there's only going to be 4 votes and it's going to be Chanel or him. And maybe part of my brain was thinking that, but really I'm a human, I'm not a robot. And I was just kind of upset that my alliance had run for the hills. And a mistake I made, if you rewatch the tribal, you should always get an answer to your question when you're in a cross-examination or whatnot. And Hai was forcing Chanel to say who she would have voted for. He was forcing it, and Chanel got away with never giving an answer because Mike interjects.
Yes.
And that was foundationally terrible. That was terrible for me because it allowed Chanel to basically get off scot-free. I think not really, but she never had to say it. Mm-hmm. And at that inflection point, when everything changed, I should have at least gotten an answer to who Chanel would have voted out. I screwed it up before the inflection point. I screwed it up after the inflection point.
Okay, Daniel, we're running short on time. So if we could just go to the lightning round. I know you have incredible answers to these questions.
We got to talk fishing.
Okay, yeah. How bad was your shoulder when you were out there?
Yeah, so I could not do any of the challenges. The doctor basically said you risk long-term damage to your shoulder if you do these challenges. The reason is because you can't control your range of motion during challenges. Things are coming at you. You have to do this, you have to do that. Snorkeling, you can control your range of motion. So I was able to do that safely. And I did 2 months of physical therapy and everything's fine now. I almost had to have surgery, but I decided not to. I went snorkeling in part because of the Rob Cesternino playbook.
Yes. You sound like you're blaming me for a lot of stuff, Daniel.
No. Well, Rob, I have a content consumption spreadsheet, as you know, and I'm looking at it now. I can tell you, I've listened to 116,088 minutes of your voice related to Survivor.
Yes. Okay. What did I say? What did I say about spearfishing?
No, I did the be honest about your dishonesty strategy.
Okay.
Coming out of that tribal.
Yes.
And I thought I needed to basically communicate to the remaining members of this tribe that I am not a schemer. I'm someone they can trust at the merge. And what demonstrates that better than literally not scheming? Because he's not scheming. He's out there in the ocean, right? He's not doing anything. I had a very different strategy from Chanel, who was very much running all over the place and scheming. My strategy was be chill, be low key, be honest about your dishonesty, and then move on and don't scheme. And that was a mistake, probably.
Okay. Daniel, I have so many more questions for you, but I know we're running out of time. Anything else real quick you want to let the listeners know? Let's see. I have RHAP specific things. We can do that anytime.
Someone should dig up in a previous voicemails episode.
Yes.
Someone calls in and uses a Darth Vader voice.
Yes.
As a voice modulator. That was me. And I have a story behind that, but you have to invite me to the deep dive in order for me to tell it.
Okay. All right. Well, Daniel, we'll see if we can work that out. Okay. Thank you so much for being here with us. It was very fun to have you on the show this season, and all the best outside of Survivor.
Of course. Have fun, Rob. I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Okay. Take care, buddy. Bye.
All right.